You know, on a slow Monday in August, you think nothing's going on, and then boom, stories hit the fan. Which is okay, because we're in the business of evaluating them. How are you? Good to see you. I cannot believe we're in the first week of August already. Time flies when you're having fun. Soak up these summer days. We so longed for them this past winter, didn't we? Dan McGowan is my guest. He is the standout reporter on WPRI.com. He kind of owns the city of Providence and the news beat there. Lots of doings going on with my top rundown item, and he'll be able to break down that and comment on some other things as well, because we've got some big things happening. So why don't we not waste any time and let's get right to this show. That's a good idea, don't you think? By the way, you can see the show 3 times a night now. MyRI TV at 7:30 and 11:30, and Fox Providence at midnight. All right, so yeah, line item number 1 is this platoon mess. This is what Dan will join us for a little bit later on, but just to give you a little bit of a taste, here's Dan's story headline. At some juncture in this news cycle, the fire union was saying they wanted to vacate the Providence pension deal. That's in reaction to Mayor Jorge Elorza saying that the actual contract with the firefighters was null and void and unenforceable, which might be one of the single dumbest tactics I've seen a mayor use in a long time, at least on a legal level. We'll talk to Dan about that. Here's a kind of a summary of where this whole mess has been as the Elorza camp tries to go to 3 platoons, meaning shifts from the 4 platoons, taking the average weekly work week for firefighters from 42 to 56 hours, all in an alleged effort to save money on this thing called overtime.
Over the weekend, negotiations broke down, and now Providence firefighters are going to ask a judge to vacate their pension settlement. The firefighters will also be moving forward with their request for the court to block their increased work week, which grew from 42 hours to 56 hours. Mayor Jorge Elorza says the change from 4 platoons to 3 will save the city $5 million a year.
I got to tell you, if there's any traction with the union on revoking the pension deal, he will not only have spent, allegedly, beginning in 2017, saving $5 million to lose $25 million on the budget. What a mess. Dan will break it down. They were in court this afternoon, and there's like multi-tiered tracks now for the moving issues in that conversation. So don't go anywhere. Coming up, we've got decisions on the PawSox. And the Speaker of the House, Nick Mattiello, has some confusion. You know, this guy is very lucid on a number of matters, and then he gets to, I don't know, a box of rocks on others. Like, hello? Here's what Nick Mattiello told Eyewitness News back in the middle of June, June 18th, about where the PawSox deal kind of stood.
Whatever the deal that's ultimately proposed for the PawSox will be well thought out, will be fully aired and vetted to the public, which is not what happened with 38 Studios. They will know the terms of it, and they'll be fixed and set terms. It's not going to be a gamble. The PawSox aren't going broke. The Red Sox aren't going broke.
Oh, well, they better win some games up in Boston. But I get his point. You know, the comparisons to 38 Studios happen all the time. What he doesn't understand is that he did so little about 38 Studios and clearing the deck at the General Assembly, changing the culture of the General Assembly, showing the taxpayers and the voters that he actually wanted to change the culture of the General Assembly, that the 38 cloud hangs over every capital investment the taxpayers are asked to make, and he doesn't get that. But that's not what he's box of rocks over. Here's the headline in Ed Fitzpatrick's column, or for his column, rather, this past Sunday. With opposition on the right and left, will the ballpark be out of a home? This is a must-read. Ed did a great job in interviewing the House Speaker and also highlighting some of the things going on here. In fact, here's one of the single dumbest things I've seen the Speaker of the House say in a long time. The extreme right and the extreme left are opposed to this, meaning the PawSox Stadium deal. It makes sense that both extremes are against something that's moderate and thoughtful and designed to create economic growth and activity. But he said most Rhode Islanders are moderate and thoughtful. What does that mean? Because you might disagree with the idea that a stadium ought to go to 195, that you're an extremist, left or right? That has got to be the most insulting thing I've seen in a long time. And here's the other thing, we didn't highlight it, but Ed writes that Nick Mattiello is confused. He doesn't understand how people can oppose the deal before hearing the new terms. Earth to Speaker Mattiello. The Paw Sox threw out a $120 million one-way cash flow deal from the state, meaning us, to them, and it was met with resounding discomfort, anger by the taxpayers. So now you guys are behind closed doors fiddling and diddling with some deal that is allegedly revenue neutral. And you've got a question and a problem with the average taxpayers who are feeling not so bullish about this thing unless and until we see the new terms. So while everyone's at the beach, you're huddling behind the scenes and you're going to come out with some new brokered deal that you'll run through the General Assembly in 8 working days, 2 hearings, and you don't understand why people are angry? Deaf ears don't begin to define the Speaker's perspective. Moving to the national scene, this guy is on a roll of all rolls. Now every Sunday show needs to have him. Headline, look at this. CBS, NBC, ABC, Sunday programs, and some highlights.
Donald Trump on the 3 network Sunday shows.
I'm preparing, but I prepare by seeing what's going on. I don't have pollsters telling me every move that, I can't say this, I can't say that.
Is he ready for Thursday's debate?
The poll numbers are very good. People are tired of being ripped off by the world.
The latest Wall Street Journal NBC poll shows Trump leading the GOP field, with Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker and former Florida Governor Jeb Bush within striking distance.
Guess what? I mean, can you imagine talking about those 2 guys within striking distance of Donald Trump? The Monmouth poll just came out. He's got 26%. By the way, remember, in a 17-person field, the field is larger than the leader. The field will gather against the leader. Don't get too excited about these poll numbers yet, you Trumpites, Trumpettes, whatever. What do we call the Trump guys, people? The what? I'm not gonna repeat that. Jessica editorializing on the broadcast, and I'm just not going to go there. But what? You'll get it tomorrow night. Guess where else I'm not going to go? Rio. I ain't swimming in Rio. Are you kidding me? The Olympics are going. Did you see this? Have you seen the headlines on this? Oh my goodness. Oh, we're just going to row your boat and compete there and do some of the long-form swimming in the rivers and the waters at Rio. Look at this story.
I think as an athlete you can do what you can to limit problems. You can, if you actually get ill from swallowing water during the race, it's not an issue at all. You're just ill after the race, and what you're trying to minimise is illness during the race. So not spending too much time in it beforehand, if you're worried about it, and taking precautions like just making sure you're clean and all that kind of thing. But I think I'm certainly no stranger to dirty water. I think I've swum in a lot worse than this, to be honest. Okay,
that wasn't a story. That was just the single dumbest comment we could find on television today. We don't know who he is either. He's just a competitor. Obviously, he has been in some dirty water because his brain's been affected. It seems to me at this point that we ought to be talking about volunteering Rhode Island to, host these particular events, because in Brazil, I wouldn't be caught. Well, you might be caught dead in the water, or you might end up that way. How could this happen? What's the Olympic Committee thinking about? All right. And this guy, don't talk at the dentist's office. All right? Washington Post headline, U.S. officials make contact with the rep for the... I cannot believe how many people are talking about this. You know that this is the #1 story on talk radio across America today? #1. Watch it.
The killing of the majestic Cecil outside a wildlife reserve in Zimbabwe outraged animal activists and lit up social media. Cecil was hit with an arrow, then shot to death, allegedly by Minneapolis area dentist Walter Palmer. Researchers had studied the lion for 9 years, and it was wearing a GPS tracking collar. One of Dr. Palmer's guides gave an interview to the Telegraph saying, "I was devastated. I could not have seen the collar at night. I should have taken it to parks, I admit that. So we did what had to be done. We took the head and skin, as the client had paid for the trophy."
I got to get some hunters in here, because I gotta understand this whole hunting thing. I'll tell you one thing. I guess the doctor, mouthed off at the dentist about this whole situation. When you're at the dentist, just keep your mouth shut. It's easy. There's things in there. Don't talk. Just nod. Your state of mind is important to us. 401-228-1886. Email us, Facebook post, whatever. What do we got here, Kev? This is a comment from Ricardo. After the Duke lacrosse scandal, one of the vindicated players pointed out that during the trial he came to realize that without the resources his family had, he'd been in the same situation poor people and people of color find themselves in when dealing with the justice system they've never been able to trust. Bob Kraft and Tom Brady now know what it feels like to be poor and black. You know what? He's absolutely right about that one. Absolutely right. Tom and Mr. Kraft have been handled by the NFL in a completely unfair way. But you know what? Sometimes you just got to settle. It is an indication that some systems can discriminate no matter how much money you have. When we come back, Dan McGowan on the latest in the courts, the firefighters, the story in Providence, all that. Stay with us. So the firefighter situation in Providence is really kind of messy right now. Paul Dowdy, the president of the firefighter union, will be our guest right here tomorrow night to kind of iron out his side. And of course, the mayor's people can send the mayor here anytime. The mayor doesn't seem to like any long-form conversation. I don't know. The questions are too tough, or maybe the answers just aren't forthcoming. Here's a headline again to remind you about what's going on. This was kind of part of the progressive argument that the firefighters were making, and Dan McGowan's been on this story all week. And here's a radio audio cut from Paul Dowdy, who was on the WPR Morning News, about some of the litigation that he wants to see happen.
We'll be going to court and filing another lawsuit today to undo the pension reform, because if it's the city's position that if the contract is invalid, then the consent decree that sort of settled all the pension reform is in fact invalid as well. So we'll go back to the starting block and go through all of that all over again with a potential price tag in the $200 million range.
No. True.
Yeah.
Unfunded liability is about $200 million that they saved with the pension reform. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for working on this story and all the stuff that you do. I think that we should put that whole pension thing, call that a tease, okay? Because we'll put that aside for a second. Let's talk about what the core issues are here and how we got here from wherever there was. There was, a couple of months ago, Jorge Alorza decided, I'm going to save money by changing the platoon system.
Right.
Take it from there.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. Remember, he holds a press conference. He lays out all these reasons why the city's, going through some financial tough times. Says the first thing we're going to do, the major thing, is we're going to go from 4 platoons to 3. It'll save us in the long run about $5 to $7 million a year.
Confused. A platoon's a shift.
That's right. It's a shift. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
And the argument, the reason why he believes those savings can happen is that currently, or at least back 2 months ago, there were roughly 100 members on each shift, each platoon, but minimum manning is 94 people. Anytime 6 or more call out, are sick, on vacation, any number of reasons, you go into paying time and a half. You have callback pay. By going to 3 platoons, those shifts grow. 120 now, it sounds like, after retirement. It's about 120 on each platoon. That means that you need more people to call out if you're going to get into overtime. It still can happen, but it's less likely.
Yeah. Well, since he's lost about 50 guys.
Yes, yeah, about 44 as of a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's gotten there's a few more in there too. It's basically, there are 362 at this point firefighters on duty, and that's why you say 3 platoons, 120 per platoon. That equals 360, 362. So.
But when he issued his edict back in early June saying, June 30th, I'm doing this.
Right.
That's when the retirees started, or the potential, or the eligible firefighters who could retire just said, I'm out of here.
That's right.
Right. That's 3 times the average retirement rate in this season. All right, well, whatever. But he couldn't get it done in the first 30 days.
That's right. Yeah, he couldn't get it done. I mean, he tried to. Remember the thing, and I know you've talked to Paul Dowdy, the union president, before. I know he's on again tomorrow. I mean, look, these guys met with the mayor, in the week leading up to his original announcement. They met, they had a beer, never had a conversation about platoon changes. Believe me, I cover the city. Behind the scenes, there were lots of conversations about potential changes to platoons, but when you sit down together and you don't have a conversation about it, I think that they were kind of breathing a sigh of relief, and then they get a call, the night before they make a big announcement. I think, that led to that month of, tough negotiation. But you're not going to have a great negotiation when you don't feel like, you're on the same page.
Of course, it all comes. He makes that move, and then in the late June days of the session, new legislation comes up, which is over 42 hours, which is what the average work week was under the 4-platoon system. It's time and a half.
Right.
Well, the platoon system from 4 to 3 changes their work week from 42 to 56 hours, adding 14 hours. So that got thwarted by the mezzanine level of mayors and lieutenant governor, saving Jorge Lorza, kind of, right? But he came up empty. He said, 30 days I'm going to do this. He couldn't do it because he didn't have a deal.
That's right. And so he said, you know what, it's true, we need more time to negotiate. We'll do another month. Basically, he did an extra month. So he put it as an August 1st, then it moved to an August 2nd deadline. That was Sunday when he did implement it. Couldn't get anywhere with it. And, he characterizes the negotiations as, productive and fruitful. I'll tell you, on the other side, nobody's saying that. It sounds like the negotiations haven't worked out. They've met, I think, 7 times at this point. And, as I've been told, they're not on the same planet, let alone in the same room.
Well, let's discuss what's been offered. What's been offered, as I understand it, is kind of all due respect to Chinese restaurants, kind of like a Chinese menu. Menu A, column B. If you choose a 10% raise for the 33% more hours you have to work, we'll attribute that to your pension.
That's right.
If you don't want that, we'll give you 30% plus, but no pension attribution.
Yep.
Correct? That's the offer?
That's exactly what the 2 offers that the mayor sat down with us on Friday. I know you had reported it actually previously. The mayor sat down with us Friday afternoon. He said, those are the 2 offers we've given. Remember, the original offer that he put in writing was only 5%. He kind of said, look, that's a starting point. We'll see where we get. But they never got anywhere, and they ended up, doing on Sunday was an 8% pay increase that does count towards your pension, the firefighter's pension.
So they had until 5 o'clock Saturday, the firefighters did, the union did, to say, we'll do this deal. They let that go by the boards.
Right.
And they were in court today for a regularly scheduled hearing on the whole mess.
That's
correct?
right, yep.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about what happened today and what the other legal issues are, because there's a handful of them. Stay with us.
Weekend, he said he's implementing an 8% raise. Gene, if last week I worked 56 hours, my regular shift in overtime, and I made $1,700, this week with this grand 8% raise that I work again 56 hours, I make about $1,300. That's $400 less. There's no way that anybody that's being honest is going to characterize that as a raise. That's a decrease in my pay.
He's going to get that's Paul Dowdy, who'll be here tomorrow night. If there's some kind of a deal worked out, Dan, with the firefighters, that they get regular time for the difference between 42 and 56, commensurate with 56 hours, meaning prorated or close to it, the firefighters will have to shut up and do their thing. But that kind of disparity is too much for them to swallow.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you heard it, Paul Dowdy on the radio, and I mean, let's just use the numbers. An 8% raise for a 33% increase in the work week, when 33% is what they would need. They would need 33 for the standard rate of pay. They still wouldn't match what they previously made, right? Because they were getting time and a half.
Right.
That's right. So.
But the 8% is really just kind of almost a down payment toward what the mayor knows he's eventually going to have to cough up after arbitration occurs. So let's get into the nitty-gritty court problem here. The union petitioned the court to be able to get authorized to go to arbitration.
That's right.
The city responded by saying, oh, by the way, that is language in our current contract that calls for that process. Go to the judge, ask for it.
Right.
By the way, the contract's invalid, and Well, you broke that story.
Right. So two things, right? One was, yes, they want to go and they want a judge to say, yes, you're going to arbitration. The other thing that they asked for was a temporary restraining order to block the changes in order to go to arbitration. You'll settle it there. The judge denied that today. The judge denied the temporary restraining order, but said, I'm still willing to consider whether you're going to go to arbitration. We'll be back in court in about 9 days, August 12th. And you're exactly right. So as part of this entire suit that the firefighters filed, the city came in last week. They had to file a response, and they listed off 5 reasons why they don't think they have to go to arbitration. Their key argument is they don't think that they think that this is a management right. It shouldn't have to be.
There's a Supreme Court decision that they're basing this on from North Kingstown that allows communities to make these kinds of decisions. The caveat is they have to be negotiated in terms.
And here's the key, and this is where the lack of a contract comes into play. The big part of the North Kingstown decision was that there was no contract in place. Up until
because there was a gap between expiration and authorization.
Bingo, exactly. Up until last week, that seems to be different in Providence, right? The contract says it goes through June 30th, 2017 in Providence. So basically what the city did last week was try to align the fact pattern with the North Kingstown case. They said, we don't think that this is a valid contract, and that's
because
their
it's
argument.
Too long.
Because
the
it's
state
too long.
statute says it can't be longer than 3 years.
That's right, exactly.
But the city council's approved the contract. It's a working document.
And other decisions have been made based on the existing contract.
Like, be careful what you ask for.
Right.
What if a judge actually nullifies the contract? All that pension reform that Tavares pulled off with the firefighters goes bye-bye.
Yep, $170 million in a cut to the unfunded liability. That's up in the air. You know, lots of decisions that were made within that pension reform.
And an annual put way more than this to cover the pension cost, way more.
That's right. Paul Dowdy
than
says
the savings.
About $22 million a year. The annual required contribution could go up. I mean, this could. He said it today when I interviewed him. He said this pushes the city past the brink of bankruptcy. He knows it, and he's saying it on the record.
Why would they make those arguments?
I'll tell you, I've talked to people, whether it's the city council, not many lawyers there, but certainly legislators, lawyers across the city and the state, and everybody's kind of scratching their heads around it.
So right now, the firefighters are working the 3 platoons, 56 hours at 8%. They got to know that somewhere down the line, it'll most likely go to arbitration. Yeah. They'll get more. But I think everybody better walk away from these other fights, or the city's going to go poof. The whole city's going to go poof.
You wonder if, because there are other lawsuits that we've covered that are in play unrelated to this stuff, just kind of working lawsuits that have been going on with the fire and the police department with the city. You kind of wonder, do you all just go sit down at a table, let's figure it all out right now, mediate the whole thing, and sort of clear the air. But at this point, the mayor has been pretty, thick-skinned about this, and he really wants to move forward with the the platoon structure changes.
With arguments that could put him in deep financial trouble.
Yeah, bigger financial trouble than the city is currently in, for sure.
All right, you cannot miss Stan's coverage of this at WPRI.com. Paul Dowdy from the Firefighter Union will be here tomorrow night, and of course, the mayor is always welcome. I'm a little sick and tired of calling and asking, Mayor, if your ideas are so smart, come on here and tell us. Danny, thank you. Appreciate the work.
Thanks for having me.
Final word and we come back. Stay with us. What we didn't get to tonight is the city of Cranston. The state police issued the final report on the police department there. The mayor went to the AG. Should I release this? Well, guess what? Based on the too many public requests, the state police just said the heck with it. They put some redactions in, which reportedly, with some computer work, go away so you can read the entire thing. We'll discuss all of that tomorrow on the radio at noon on WPRO until 3 o'clock each and every weekday. And I'm sure more on that tomorrow. In addition, Paul Dowdy, the Firefighter Union President, will be here. Don't forget, 3 chances to watch us, 7:30, 11:30 on MyRI, and midnight on Fox Providence.